Hey, what's going on, everybody? We are here again, gathered here today for another video. Now, in the last video, I think I told you exactly what this one was going to be about. Conspiracy Theory Iceberg number 2, Tier 2, baby. Here we are. Now, if you didn't watch Tier 1, video number 1 of the Conspiracy Theory Iceberg, well, I don't really know what you're doing here. Why are you? No, I'm just kidding. But seriously though, please go watch it. It's pretty cool. It's about the Bilderberg group. And I do want to also give a refresher just so you guys know. I'm not covering the entire conspiracy theory iceberg. Please don't go away. Not just yet. Don't go away. Now, the reason why I'm not covering the entire one is I don't really care to rehash an entire list when there's plenty of other great channels out there that have already dug deep inside of it and done basically the entire list. You know, why am I wasting your time when you could just go watch those great videos? So the thing that makes these a little bit different is instead of doing the entire one, I'm picking just a select few in each tier, and I'm trying to drill down and take deeper dives into some of these subjects. However, if you want to see another subject, just drop it in the comments below and we'll see what we can do. Also, I want to say as well that the tier number is also going to correlate with the number of topics that I'm going to talk about. We are on tier 2, so I am covering 2 of the theories. And other than that, let us get started. Also, I thought it may help if you figured out exactly why I was picking some of these. So the way that I'm working off of this methodology wise is either A, I'm picking it because I think it's cool or neat, whatever. And 2, some of these I feel like has some truth to it. The one we're going to talk about today is some pretty heavy truth. But yeah, that's basically it. They're either cool or I think they're kind of true and we should kind of just shed a light on it. Jumping right in, theory 1 of 2 for this video is experiments on humans. Yeah, like I said, heavy truths. So I really don't know why this is on the, conspiracy theory iceberg, because there's tons of truth here and we're about to dive into it. So I'm going to talk to you about a few different cases of experiments that were done on humans, what the results were, what these scientists, mad scientists, were looking for, and how, unfortunately, a lot of people were sacrificed for our benefit today. Unit 731, also known as the Ishi unit, and it went by a few other names as well. This was a unit that did very, very, very heinous things to humans. It was a secret chemical and biological warfare research unit that was created by the Imperial Japanese Army. They did heinous and ridiculous experiments on humans between the Second Sino-Japanese War and World War II. They were known to have committed the most notorious war crimes by the Imperial Japanese Army. The facility was built in 1935 as a replacement for the Zongma Fortress. They were commonly testing these experiments on humans, hence experiments on humans, and they referred to these humans as logs. And boy, that is messed up. So when I say logs, L-O-G-S, I literally mean logs, like lumber. They referred to them as lumber logs. And part of the reason why is because whenever people started, making remarks and complaints, because they'd start hearing like screaming coming from the factory is what they called it. They'd hear screaming coming from the factory and they'd be like, yo, what's going on in there? And then they were like, oh, well, this is a lumber company. And the screams that you hear, I don't know how they explain that away. I guess they were like, it's, just work-related injuries. And people were like, that's a lot of work-related injuries. Are you sure about that? And then after a while, people just kind of got the idea, yeah, I probably shouldn't ask questions. I don't want to be inside of their screaming. So, but I just think it's crazy that they literally refer to human beings as like logs of lumber. And it got so crazy that started being an inside joke there as well. And that would be the thing. And people would be like, how many logs did you chop today? I wish I was making this up, but I'm not. That was a thing. That's what they would ask people. How many logs did you chop today? It is estimated that up to 500,000 people were killed by the personnel at Unit 731. Many of the victims were of a broad selection. So you would be one of these type of people. You could be anti-Japanese, you could be homeless, you could be mentally handicapped, you could be a thief, you could be a robber. I mean, they kind of didn't care. I mean, literally, you could just be homeless and they would just scoop you up and do things to you. Some of these included people that were rounded up by the military that were considered people who were doing suspicious activities or suspicious people, which in the middle of a war, most of the time, this is people who say, hey, the war is wrong, or we shouldn't be doing this, and then they get labeled as suspicious people, so take with that a grain of salt. But this is where it gets really jacked up. So those type of people that could be suspicious people ranged anywhere between men, women, elderly people, pregnant women, and even infants. The members of Unit 731, the personnel, they were comprised of a bunch of doctors and bacteriologists who had worked on similar projects before this, and they had done it on animals. The thing is that they said is these people had gotten so desensitized to these projects that made them some of the best doctors and candidates to perform these type of procedures and experiments on humans, because they had already killed so many animals that what's another life? Which is crazy. So far, we've talked about it. They've done heinous things, right, with these experiments, but what were the experiments? Why were these people screaming? What was going on? Let's dive into that, and this is where it's just about to get dark. So some of the experiments they would perform on these people is they would inject them with vaccines. They were not vaccines. And, that experiment, epic foreshadowing, is on here too. So you could guess it's along the same premise. So what were they actually injecting these people with? Well, you guessed it. They were injecting these people with diseases, not actual vaccines. And of course, it was for the same reason. They wanted to see what would happen to these people if they were inflicted by these diseases and left untreated over a longer period of time. These diseases, of course, include gonorrhea, syphilis, and probably other things like smallpox or I don't know, something, but something you definitely don't want injected into your bloodstream, I'll say that. Some of these other experiments included vivisection, biological warfare, weapon testing, and frostbite testing, and even forced pregnancy testing. I mean, listen, it was dark. Super dark, and yes, you heard those last two correctly. So the way that kind of worked is they would take a male and a female prisoner, and they would basically hold them at gunpoint, and they would make the man force himself upon the woman, because if you didn't, then they're going to JFK you. I really don't know how to say this without, I'm trying to tiptoe through the dark, muddy waters of YouTube algorithms, but I think you're picking up what I'm putting down. And then, of course, frostbite testing. So they would dump buckets of cold water onto some of these prisoners, and it would be different every time. They may dump a bucket of cold water on like a person's arm, and then they would take you out into obviously blistering, freezing cold temperatures, and they would let it freeze, and you would become frostbitten, and it would get so crazy that they would see what would happen if they could like shatter your arm off or something. So whenever you hear weird facts and you start thinking to yourself, how would anybody know that? Chances are it was probably from either Unit 731 or it was probably from one of the concentration camps from Nazi Germany. they did these very weird experiments on humans, and this is how we know some of the limitations of humans that you would ask, again, like, how would anybody know that, I think I said in a previous video that the heart can squirt blood for 20 feet. Well, somebody figured that out. They didn't just spitball that with science. Unfortunately, somebody figured that out. Yeah. So moving on to the next experiment. Yes, MKUltra. So we've definitely heard this experiment, and if you haven't, boy, oh boy, buckle up. MKUltra. The best way to put it, and I think maybe young David Chappelle have said this in one of his sketches, was there was a point in time where the U.S. government, more specifically the CIA, they were trying to figure out ways to basically do mind control. Now, for some of the reasons why they did MKUltra can vary. Some people believe that they did it to control the general population. Other people say that they did it to try to figure out how they could make a soldier even more obedient, and they could make them follow orders a lot better and a lot faster. And I don't know, I guess make the army or the military more efficient. So they did it in various ways, and I think I should point that out as well. And this is what we're going to talk about. So whenever you hear MKUltra, people always think about like the LSD and the acid portion of it, right? But there was actually a few other different ways that didn't even involve drugs that they were trying to figure out how to actually burrow into people's mind and get them to do what they wanted them to do just by manipulating their emotions and their feelings in certain ways. And I will get into some notable people as well, but overall, let's get into the meat and potatoes. Let's get into how it was made, origin story, all that good stuff. So as I stated earlier, it was created by the CIA as a means to figure out how they could control people's mind. It started in about 1953, I believe, and it finished up officially, maybe, whatever, we'll see how that goes, in 1973. So the craziest thing I think to me about MKUltra isn't even necessarily the experiments. The craziest thing to me is the fact that the only reason we even know this existed is because of a whistleblower. So I want to throw that out there. Shout out to all the whistleblowers. You know what I mean? Some people try to hate on whistleblowers, but you will never know what's happening right under your nose without some of these people who try to call it out. If it wasn't for this whistleblower, we would have never known this. They would have never came out with this. And this is what gets even more interesting about MKUltra. In 1975, the church committee and the president at the time, I believe it was Gerald Ford, they basically called out the CIA and they were like, yo, what are y'all doing, man? What's all this we hearing about, this mind control stuff? What's going on? And what makes that so nutty is like the director of the CIA 2 years before that, so 1973, like when I said the experiment ended, tried as hard as he could to destroy all of the documents tied to it. He tried to just obliterate it like it never existed, which should let you know that we only have just tiny little inklings of information, but it lasted so long, and it lasted for 20 years, guys. 20 years MKUltra went on right under people's noses, and we actually don't know the depths of it. We don't know how deep it went. A lot of people think it was just, like I said, just people taking acid and trying to manipulate them, but it was so deeper than that. In 1977, a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, was filed against the CIA requesting that they release information on MKUltra. The public must know. What are you weirdos doing? And they said, cool. And they dropped 20,000 files. Now here's the thing. I need you to still grasp this, okay? They dropped 20,000 files, people. And this is even with all of the information that they destroyed. This is what was remaining. They still destroyed tons of evidence, and out of that tons of evidence destroyed, 20,000 files still remained. How much did they do on this experiment? Like, I don't even know, man. It's freaky. It's really freaky. So in 2001, there was even more documents that were released and bubbled to the surface. And this is also very interesting. I know I'm saying that a lot, but I mean, come on, bro. This is very interesting. The government tried to literally do mind control on people and find it successful. Like, they were looking for success in that. That's crazy, right? Makes you wonder, are your thoughts really yours? No, we're not in there for this. Nope, we're not doing that. Anyways, in 2001, they released these documents, right? Or they bubbled up or were somehow released. And what they did discover is there was success in this. So the government, they weren't successful in trying to do LSD and other types of forms of mind control, but they did figure out that the government could control certain small animals such as dogs and even beetles with electronic remote control devices literally like attached to a certain part of their brain, and they could make them do certain basic tasks like walk or pick something up or, you know, just things like that. So they could literally control, I think it was a beetle, and they put the chip in the brain of it, and they could make it fly, stop flying, walk forward, stop, walk backwards, and just do all these other just very basic tasks. So again, how do you know your own thoughts aren't you? No, I'm not doing that. So here goes some of the ways that they try to mind control people. You have your obvious one that everyone knows, right? With the LSD. So they tried psychoactive methods. And it also mentions they tried other chemicals and drugs, but they don't list it. So LSD wasn't the only one. But they also tried electroshock. You've seen that before, probably. They tried hypnosis. Ooh, government's silly sometimes, I swear. But they tried hypnosis. They tried sensory deprivation. That's probably where like psychic came from. Also, fun fact, if you've ever watched Stranger Things, it kind of loosely is about MKUltra. This is where like 11 got her powers because her mother was like, I think like an MKUltra, you know, patient or victim, I guess you could say. But that's kind of a little bit where it's about, but it's not directly like on the nose. This is exactly what happened kind of thing. Obviously, I hope Demogorgons don't exist. But they also tried abuse. They tried mental, verbal, and even sexual abuse. And I'm going to name some notable people towards the end, and you'll see what were the results of that. Also, what makes this experiment very different from the last one, Unit 731 that I mentioned, was there was no type of concentration camps or POWs, prisoners of war, nothing like that. Most of the people who were under the experiment had no real clue that this is what was happening to them. So it would be a bunch of like random college kids and random people sprinkled throughout both Canada and the United States. And it would just be random people that had no clue that they were even a part of this experiment, which makes that even nuttier. Like civilians just, you know, had living their life, and they had no clue that basically their psyche, their reality was being warped around them for some type of experiment, which, I mean, ultimately changed the future and the mindsets of some of these people forever, unbeknownst to them. And again, what makes this so crazy is that the only reason we know about this experiment is because of a whistleblower. Some of these people went to the grave not even having a clue that the reason why their life deteriorated so fast is because it was manipulated. So if you caught on to some of the dates that I said earlier, me personally, I think this is kind of funny. So remember what I said, right? Remember that I said that they got called out by Gerald Ford and the church committee in 1975, right? They got called out and said, hey, what were you guys doing? But they started destroying the evidence and all of the files and data 2 years before that. So what would make them destroy the data before they even got busted and they closed down the program? Well, in 1973, Watergate scandal started happening, and the CIA basically just freaked out and got paranoid that they too would be busted for what they were doing at the same time, which is funny because it's like everybody was doing shady stuff in the government, but nobody was aware of the shady stuff that one another was doing. So one person gets busted, and then everybody else that was doing shady stuff started freaking out, and they just started dumping all of their evidence at the same time, which I think is kind of funny. So that's basically the main reason why they started destroying the evidence before they even got caught. And like I said, because of all of the destroyed evidence, which you have to think about it again, like I said, 20,000 files kind of remained amongst probably oceans of information that they did over, the span of those, 20 years? Yeah, 20 years. So there's no telling how much information we lost, how many people died from this experiment, because people did die from this experiment. And, yeah, we're going to start getting into that grim part right now. One of the craziest things is not only were they really operating on random civilians, but Frank Olson, who I believe actually worked for the CIA, was also a subject and didn't even know it. So somebody slipped LSD into his water, and they basically just followed him around for like a week just to see what would happen. Well, a week goes by, and Frank Olson unfortunately took his own life by jumping out of an 11-story window at a hotel. And the craziest part about that is literally the person right next to his room, who bugged his room, obviously, was another CIA agent. Again, he was being followed around that whole week. So his, neighbor at his hotel, whatever you want to call those, right next to him, basically knew this guy was about to off himself, and I guess just let him off himself. Disclaimer: I don't want to off myself, okay? Because I realize I'm talking about the CIA, and they get a little emotional when people criticize them. I'm not really criticizing them. I'm just stating the facts. But again, I like living, okay? I just want to tell you guys what's happening out there, and I mean, it means to an end when it comes to their projects, I guess. Means to an end. One of your fellow people offs himself, and we just keep on rolling, whatever. Whitey Bulger, Allen Ginsberg, Robert Hunter, Ken Kesey? Well, anyways, Ken Kesey was the author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and I think that's crazy. All the people I just named are confirmed test subjects of MKUltra. Also, think about who I said. Whitey Bulger. If you don't know who Whitey Bulger is, definitely look up Whitey Bulger. But these people were all confirmed to be MKUltra subjects, 100% stamped and approved. Now, let's get into some of the people that were allegedly test subjects. One of the most notorious alleged test subjects of MKUltra is Charles Manson. Yeah, that guy, Charles Manson. So if you go back and look at some of his history, you know that there was a point in time that he was inside of prison. I mean, before the obvious reasons why he went to prison. But, way in his younger days, he went to prison. And they say that while he was in prison, he was having subjects run on him. And some of those subjects included him being under the influence of LSD. Again, that's not an official one. That's an alleged one. And it's Charles Manson. If Charles Manson, which clearly the sun is out right now and it's a very beautiful sunny day, if he told me that, I'd be like, I don't know, man. I just don't trust you. I don't know. That's how much I trust Charles Manson. Ted Kaczynski. If you don't know who Ted Kaczynski is, he is the Unabomber, and his situation is very unique. So they say that he was part of it as an alleged subject, but he was not under the influence of LSD. Instead, he was a person who was verbally abused. So what they said is whenever he was in college, he would write excellent papers, very excellent theories and thesis papers over the subjects that he was studying. But for some reason, he would always get bad mouth, like all of his professors. And I think they may have even passed him, but every time he had to turn something in, they would just beat him down verbally, and they'd just be like, bro, you suck. Why are you still here? Like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're a dummy. You're stupid. Like, they would just go in on Ted Kaczynski. And he even said it himself. He's like, I don't know why they would, and like he said he felt, he's like, I don't know why they're singling me out. He's like, I don't know what I did to these people, but like they they just keep calling me stupid, and they just keep saying I don't know what I'm talking about. And clearly I do. Like, imagine if you clearly knew that 2 + 2 = 4, and you turned it in and they were just like, you idiot, it's obviously 5. And then you look at other people's work and it says 2 + 2 = 4, and everybody has like a check, and then your 2 + 2 = 4 has like a big fat red X, and you're just like, what are you doing? And he's like, you're stupid, bro. Why are you still? And apparently he just got messed with. So yeah. Moving on to experiment number 3, the Tuskegee Experiment. Keeping the same tempo as we did from Unit 731, there will be some syringes and there will be some sorrow. This refers to the experiments that took place from 1932 all the way up to 1972, 40 years, in Tuskegee, Alabama. It was funded by the U.S. Public Health Services and the CDC. Yes, that CDC. And a lesser known fact is the Tuskegee Experiment is actually a shortened name of the whole name of the experiment. The full name is the Tuskegee Study of Untreated Syphilis in the Negro Male. As stated earlier in the name and the description, I guess, they injected about 400 black men with syphilis, and they left it untreated for a long time just to see the effects of what it would do when left untreated. Now, keep this in mind, because this is the part that really chapped my hides. The vaccine for syphilis came out in 1943. This experiment lasted until 1972, dog. In 1964, WHO's Declaration of Helsinki states that if you are to ever do experiments on humans, they must be notified. I do keep noticing how these dates clash with like the truth. Like, they said that in 1964, yet this experiment went on till 1972, yet MKULTRA went on till 1973. So as we can see, when it comes to the government, rules are definitely meant to be broken. So, also, fun fact, this experiment was actually sponsored and utilized also by the Tuskegee University. So the university's Legacy Museum actually has a check that is on display. This check was issued by the U.S. government to one of the victims. Some call them test subjects. I'm guessing as a compensation to say, hey, sorry, we jacked you up for all that time, but here's a little bit of money. So there you go. But somehow they have one of the checks on display. I don't know if the person passed away before they could cash the check, or if they turned it down, or what, but yeah. Some say this subject really shows just how racist the United States was, especially at that particular time, given that all of the test subjects were black men, and not just any type of black men, but they were black men from rural areas. So you're looking at farmers, sharecroppers type of beat, you know what I mean? So a lot of these were super country black men that were just, your average farmers, just out farming and what have you, living in smaller towns and, not really big city slickers. The reason why this also brought up racism, and we're going to get into that in a little bit, but there was a lot of misconceptions happening in this experiment. One of the beliefs at the time was that black people, for some reason, were more prone to venereal diseases than any other race. Listen, whenever you hardline a VD, chances of you getting it are probably pretty high when you just inject it right into your arm. I'm not a scientist or anything, but I feel like any race would see some adverse side effects to that. But, again, I'm just a dude here, whatever. But, black people in them VDs, I guess. During World War II, about 256 of these test subjects tried to, go to the war. But you got to get those checkups and whatnot, right? So basically Public Health Service stopped it, and they kind of intervened and was like, oh, no, hold on. We got the testing. Y'all Get out of that. Get out of that. We'll test them. And they stepped in. And the reason why I find this funny is one of the other super racist misconceptions was the reason why the government chose black people and black men specifically was because they said black people are too dumb to go to the doctors and get checked out if something happens with them. So they're the easiest people to do something like this on. Undetectable without having to go into the public eye really and, you know, do what Unit 731 was doing. But that was one of the main reasons why, is they said black people, you know, you're just too stupid to go to the hospital and get checked up. So you're the best candidate for this. You don't care about, you know, your health or going to actual physician. So yeah, we're going to use you. So they were even able to get these men excluded from the draft list. So I'm guessing the people that tried to go to World War II, I guess they signed up on their own, which is even more sad that these guys were willing to just go on their own and fight for the country without even having to get drafted. And you know, they had that patriotic nature to them just for these experiments to happen unbeknownst to them. So they were excluded from the draft. And I guess they tried on their own and they were stopped because, you know, you got to get the physical, and they were like, oh, let's talk about it. So these people were basically stopped. One of the lead scientists or doctors on the experiment said that this was one of the greatest experiments of all time because it was their chance to really get in here and just do something like this with the type of technology they had at the time and do it basically unscathed and untouched and uninterrupted without having to worry about anything else. So they needed this thing to go on as long as possible. Going back to what I said earlier about black people being too stupid to go to doctors, there was a little bit more to that as well. And I think this was a quote. Forgive me, I'm going to look down, but I want to read it to you because I thought this was wild. I'm like, bro, I don't know if I could have lived in these time periods. Y'all was wilding, bro. Listen to this. African Americans have such strong libidos that they can't control them. They're so galactically stupid that they won't come in for treatment. So the disease is both endemic and epidemic. Now, here's where it gets, I mean, this is all dark, but this is where it gets kind of funny to me. So black people are galactically stupid, which, dang, I've never heard that used before, but galactically stupid to come in for treatment. Well, throughout this entire experiment, basically every single person that got infected tried their hardest to go in for treatments. Every single person was like, yo, I'm gonna go to a doctor. Something's not right. And every single time they tried to go to a doctor, there was this person that intercepted them, and they would try to go to like a specific doctor or whatever, right? So this person was kind of playing this cat and mouse game of trying to like head them off before they got to a real doctor that could diagnose them and be like, oh snap. So this person for like all of these years, what did I say, 40 years? 40 years this person was just going around monitoring all of these people, basically getting to the doctor's office before they did to stop them from getting treatment. Do you know how crazy that is? Like, bro, these experiments are wild, but it just goes to show you that obviously black people aren't that dumb. They tried. So all these misconceptions that they had were wrong in this experiment, but they just kept going anyway. And I mean, you know, these people tried to get treatments and they just kept getting intercepted repeatedly. Repeatedly, this person would go in and be like, oh, no. And here was the craziest thing. And I want you to think about this the next time you listen to Taylor Swift. I know what you think. You're like, what? So whenever they were in the doctor's office and they got intercepted, right? The doctor would look at him and be like, just looks like you got bad blood. Whatever that means. But yeah, that was their excuse as to why they were feeling some of the symptoms they were feeling. You got bad blood. Go figure. Yes, and here goes another experiment that the US government has done on its people. This one's weird, super weird, but very creative, and Man, if the right director gets a hold of this movie's gonna be a banger, I'm telling you. In 1980, Robert Shafran attended Sullivan Community College, and immediately when he stepped on campus for his freshman year, it was weird, like literally immediately. So for some weird reason, people were coming up and they were like, welcome back. Hey, what are you doing here? You said you weren't going to come back this semester. I'm so glad you made it. Oh my God, you're here. And he's just going to throw him back like, what? Like, I don't know any of you people. What are you talking about? And you know, they're just like, whatever. You're such a kidder. This guy. Oh my God. Anyways, happy to see you, man. I'm so glad you're back. We're going to have a fun year. And I mean, to be honest with you, man, it was a pretty cushy situation. You know, he had a couple girls coming up to him, right on the cheeks. Oh my God, you're back. Eddie. Wait a minute. My name's Robert. Call me Eddie for. Who's this Eddie? Who's Eddie? You know, I'm Eddie. No, you're going to kiss me on the cheek. I'm Eddie for right now. Hold up. Wait a minute. After a while, another student named Michael ran into Robert, and he was like, you know what? I think I got it. Let me ask you a few questions, man. I may be able to sort this out for you. This is going to blow your lid off if I'm right, but let me ask you, were you adopted? And then Robert was like, yeah, I was adopted. Okay. Cool. All right. What year were you born? And then he ended up telling him the year he was born. And then he was like, okay, all right. And he asked him a couple more questions. Long story short, it ended up figuring out. And, you know, Michael was like, you know what? This is going to sound weird to you, bro. You might want to sit down for this, stand up, whatever. I don't know. But there's a guy that used to be my roommate here. His name was Eddie. You look exactly like Eddie. Everything about you is the exact same. And everything you just told me, both of you guys were adopted. And both of you guys were born the same year. You might have a twin, bro. And that ended up being the exact case. So shortly afterwards, they had a reunion. They met up with each other, and I mean, it has to be a very surreal experience, right? Imagine going your entire life not even knowing that you have a twin, like, let alone, you know, a brother or a sister, but a spitting image of yourself is walking around and you have no clue. And what's even freakier is, what are the chances that both of you end up going to the exact same university, the exact same college or whatever? And people start freaking out and they notice this. That's very disturbing, and I don't really believe in coincidences, so that probably somehow got set up. So, of course, this is a very freaky story, right? Very weird, very different. So it gets picked up by some news stations, right? Obviously. So whenever it ended up on the news, someone else ends up in the mix and they say, hey, dog, those two dudes look exactly like you on the TV. What is that about? So now it is triplets. What? So there were 3 kids, basically, triplets, and all 3 of them were separated at birth somehow. Even crazier of a story, right? So they end up meeting up together, and then they freak out and like, what the F? It's 3 of us. And I'm pretty sure at that point they were like, dude, what's happening? Like, are we clones? How many more of us is it? But that's it. It's just 3. It's not like a genome soldier kind of thing like Metal Gear Solid. It's just 3 triplets, 3 guys, whatever. And they ended up having a reunion and they figured out about each other. So after all of the joy, the camaraderie, and the communion, you know, ended, that's when the sobering moments started coming together and people were like, how could this have happened? How in the world were we separated and it's 3 of us? And that's when it started getting weird, because even the parents of, you know, basically all 3 of them were saying the same thing. They were like, dude, adoption agency, you know, they reached out to them. They were like, hey, why didn't you let us know that this kid was a triplet? We would have happily took all 3 of them. Why did you only give us 1? You didn't even let us know that this was a thing. And there's no way that nobody noticed this or this slipped through the cracks and you split up these 3 boys. There's no way. That's when it started getting weird. It turns out these boys were actually part of a greater experiment, and the experiment was to really figure out the age-old question: nature versus nurture, and also how do different environments affect people differently. Yeah, that's right. The government kind of split up 3 brothers just to figure out if nature versus nurture was a thing. In the beginning, when they were coming off of the highs of realizing that they knew that there was more out there than just themselves, the brothers formed a very strong bond, and they even opened up a restaurant business together. Unfortunately, over time, the relationships soured between the brothers, and they just never really picked up the pieces together. And in 1995, Eddie unfortunately took his own life. It sucks, and I'm pretty sure, figuring out that you were a puppet of the government probably didn't have anything to do with that, but, whatever. But yeah, that's the unfortunate truth, and yeah, the relationship has never really been the same between the 2 remaining brothers either. To this day, a lot of the information in this experiment is still either heavily redacted or still heavily classified, and it won't be coming off of classification for years. If I remember correctly, I want to say like something crazy, like 2068 or something, or maybe 2048. Basically, in other words, they are trying to make these documents classification outlast the people that were a part of it, because either A, these people are going to get super angry and probably sue the mess out of the government, or B, it's some crazy, crazy stuff in there that will probably blow off the lids of a lot more people that may not even realize they were a part of that experiment also. So those documents are classified. They won't be coming off of it for years and years down the road. Chances are by the time those documents release, I won't even be here. So yeah. The records of this experiment are locked inside of Yale University, which I think is kind of weird. But the lead physician that was over this particular experiment decided to leave them there, and he asked them not to uncover this until the year 2066, in hopes that everyone that was a part of this experiment will be presumably dead or too old and basically incapacitated to do anything about it. So, and let us get into the last experiment. This is an experiment that really, really steams me, because there is a chance that I myself was a part of this experiment, or possibly even you watching this video. You could have been a part of this experiment and not even known. So in 2012, Facebook ran a psychological experiment on people for about a week, and they wanted to see if they could influence your emotions, and influence basically you psychologically through the type of images and through the type of media that you consumed. For January 11th through January 18th, so like I said, a week, Facebook showed users either nothing but positive or nothing but negative media for the entire week to try to figure out if they could manipulate your emotions and your psychology. So during that time, you were a subject, or potentially a subject, because according to them, they didn't do it to all users. They took a sample size of people. And yeah, through that time, you were a test subject. And again, what did we say passed in 1964? You're supposed to tell people if they're a test subject? Yeah, you didn't get told. So yeah, you were a test subject of an experiment, potentially, and it was unbeknownst to you. So I don't know how good your memory serves you, because this has been a decade now, over a decade, January 2012. But if you can recall, during that particular week of the 11th through the 18th, you may have been affected, and this is how you know. If you were on the positive side and you were receiving positive images, you were shown things such as 15 photos that restore humanity, or some kind of cutesy stuff or whatever. If you were on the negative side, you were seeing images of like dead dogs and crime and beheadings and all this other crazy stuff, and they were just throwing this at its users for like a week straight just to see how these people reacted. And another thing that was also very interesting was they really used this experiment to basically just magnify FOMO. If you don't know what FOMO is, it's the fear of missing out. So another way that they were able to drive depression literally into people, they made people depressed on purpose, was they would show people images of, like, you know, family members or friends going on vacation, and you would get that FOMO and you would start saying, what am I doing? You know, I'm stuck here at work at this job I may or may not like, and everybody out having fun without me and all this other stuff. And they would just manipulate people through some of these images. It's very unfortunate, but I mean, yeah, that happens a lot with social media. You know, I've actually talked to a few women because I wanted to hear their side of how they feel about certain things on Instagram. Now, understand this is just conversation. I'm not trying to make any claims or anything like that, but you know, I would ask them, how do you feel about, you know, all these IG models? And some of these women, you know, they said, you know, it's kind of rough because I feel like this unnecessary pressure to be, you know, upheld to a certain standard, even if I don't even believe in it myself. And it's almost kind of like you gotta go with the motions of the ocean, you know what I mean? So I think it's terrible. You know, I tell some of my close friends, I think you should pump the brakes on social media. You know, like I said earlier, I said it as a joke, but I mean, at the same time, it's kind of serious. Are your thoughts actually your own thoughts sometimes? Very important. But what I really want to highlight on this particular part, and I mean, I'm really serious about this. The timing couldn't be more perfect, even though I promise you, I wrote this particular thing months ago, like in 2021, I wrote this video out. But it couldn't be more perfect than now. You know, I mentioned some of the experiments earlier about prisoners of war, you know, at Unit 731, and, you know, basically how they were able to do what they were able to do because they, in their heads, they separated themselves. You know, they looked at these people as logs, right? And these kind of things happen in these experiments, and these treacherous crimes happen because at some point we lose some of our own humanity by looking at other people and thinking that they are less than humans. You know, this happened with black people. You know, they did the whole 3/5 thing. You know, people that are black aren't really humans, they're 3/5 of a human, they're like monkeys or whatever. And then these people were logs, and when it came to, you know, the concentration camps in, you know, Nazi Germany, you know, those people were considered the lesser inferior race. They weren't the master race. So I just beg of you, when you look at people, understand that these are people. You're going to have your differences, right? You're going to have things that you don't agree on. But at the end of the day, man, we're all trying to do the same thing, which is survive, live to see another day, and be in pursuit of happiness. So, you know, I just keep that in mind, because you have to understand a lot of people throughout these different eras, they were smart and they were intelligent as well, and they still found some kind of way to look at people as lesser. So all I can say is just have the humanity in your heart to, you know, still see the best in people and just don't consider people logs. Jesus. But yeah, man, that's all I really wanted to say on that. Let's get into the second topic. Wow, this is a long conspiracy theory video. How is it going to get when it's like 3, 4, 5 topics? Anyway, so the other topic is aura. If you've ever watched any anime and you're a weeb, you probably know what an aura is and kind of what it's dipping into. So auras, that's going to be the second topic. In spiritual beliefs, an aura is said to be a very faint light that wraps around the entirety of a living creature, or sometimes even objects. And it is said to be some type of basically life force. So, you know, we have these things in many different religions. You have souls, you have chi or ki. And I mean, you know, that's kind of what auras tend to allude to. It's more or less the physical, visible thing that apparently you're supposed to see if you're, I guess, woke enough. Something. Psychics and people in holistic medicines claim to see auras in people or objects, and they can even get it down to the size, the luminosity, the color, and even the vibrations that some people's auras give off. Alternative medicine believes that the aura is part of a hidden anatomy that gives off certain things like possibly your health, where your health is heading, and a few other indicators as well, such as your well-being or even your mental state at the time. Obviously, this is met with heavy criticism, people considering it to be a pseudoscience, and there is no true evidence actually backing any of these claims up. Aura is derived from Latin and ancient Greek, meaning wind, breeze, or breath. It wasn't until, I believe, like late 19th century that it started meaning what we kind of think of as today as like energy or light emitting from the body, or I guess an object again. Aura also branches into other aspects such as ESP, we'll cover that in another video, reincarnation, and many other holistic and psychic type avenues, spiritual of course as well. A psychologist by the name of Andrew Neer has said that there is really no evidence to state that auras are derived from anything dealing with psychic abilities, which I thought was interesting because he didn't say they don't exist. He just said it has nothing to do with psychic powers in its origin. So I don't know what he's on, but that's what he's feeling. Studies have shown that auras are merely nothing but optical illusions that are given off by after images. You know, the after image thing. You've seen it. I feel like I'm doing the John Cena. What am I doing? What the hell? Neurologists have given scientific explanations stating that what people are actually seeing is either signs of epilepsy, go get checked out, or you are probably under some type of psychedelic influence such as LSD, and what you think you are seeing as an aura is nothing but your mind playing trips on you. Oh, you like how I did that, don't you? Yeah, you like that. Other causes could include symptoms dealing with the eyes or even migraines, which is crazy. Imagine having a super crazy migraine and then all of a sudden you swear you could see life forces in people. That's a long day. Now, here is the reason why I included this on here, because it's probably not related, but I thought it was interesting. So recently we have actually figured out that humans do have, I guess you could say, an aura. So now understand, I'm not sitting here saying that, you know, we have ki or something like that. So the International Institute of Biophysics in News actually released some information. The short end of it is we kind of do have auras. So basically they did a study, and what they realized is humans, Homo sapiens, us, he, she, we do actually emit a light off of us, funny enough. And it's a very weak light, undetectable to the naked eye, but humans are bioluminescent, believe it or not. And again, like I said, it's extremely weak. You're never, ever gonna see it with your naked eye. No, you're just never. I was going to make a joke, but I didn't know what I was going to say. But you're never going to see it, but apparently that is 100% the case. We do have a little bit of bioluminescence to us. So, yeah, in a weird sense, it's like we do kind of have auras, but again, it's just a little light that is produced from us. I'll try to put the link to that article below, but if not, again, you can kind of just type in humans bioluminescent and you can find some actual research papers. I implore you, don't just go to like the news articles. You can find the actual resource papers, or the research papers, my bad, written by the actual scientists at these different type of universities who run these experiments and test these things out using their super fancy equipment and scientific method. Yeah. So, in short, what have we learned here? We've learned that humans can do some very inhumane things. We've also learned that humans also glow a little bit. So, boy, that's some yin-yang stuff right there, isn't it? I didn't plan to make such a yin-yang video. That's interesting. Anyways, that's been all for today. I'm going to be honest with you, man. I'm extremely thirsty. Got my spicy water over here, Topo Chico. Yeah, man, that's all we got going on for us today. Hope you guys have a fantastic day. I'll see you in the next one, and toodaloo for now.